Hey guys, in this video, I wanted to show you another quartz build using a tuna or mini tuna style case. In another video, I used a similar case, which is a 43 millimeter mini or baby tuna case. And that's the one right here. And it is using a VH31 movement. This time around, we will be using the AX32 or PC32 movement. They will also work with the AX33 and AX PC33 as well. And of course, these are quartz movements. These quartz movements are easy to acquire and are quite affordable. But before we do that, let's do a watch check. So here I am wearing a mechanical watch that I built recently. It's got a case styled after the IWC engineer watch. Instead of the quartz movements that you usually see me build with, this is actually an NH35 movement. And I have a lot of mechanical watches, but I find that there is no representation in terms of quartz builds on YouTube. That's why I do a lot of videos about quartz builds. But anyways, I do like mechanical watches. So here, side by side, you'll see that these are very similar in that they have the same case, not just different colors. They both have quartz movements. However, they are different in that if you look carefully, you can see that the one on the left, it kind of has a smoother sweep. It ticks 4 times a second, whereas the one on the right, it's using the AX32 and it ticks every second. So this is more like a conventional quartz watch that you'll find where they just kind of tick every second. So back to the watch case. This is a mini or baby tuna, so it's smaller than the usual full-size tuna watch case. And I think this is a good size because the regular tuna is about 40 millimeters, which borderlines on a bit too big of a watch. Here it is side by side with my larger tuna case. The one on the right is a 48 millimeter, so it's a full-size tuna case, whereas the left one is the smaller 43 millimeter one, and I much prefer the smaller one because it's better on my wrist. So as usual, let's get started with the parts list. This is the 43 millimeter Seiko mini tuna inspired case that I talked about before. It has a mineral crystal, and this one is made out of stainless steel. I had to get this case because I really like the gray and black bezel insert as well as the white chapter ring. And of course, this is the AX32 quartz movement. So this movement is a very affordable one. You'll usually find these in watches or quartz watches that are under $30. And it's very popular, and they're made by Epson, which I think is a subsidiary of Seiko. So there is a derivative of that PC32, which is, I believe, also made by a subsidiary of Seiko Hattori, I believe. It's a very inexpensive movement, and I just happen to have a few of them in my own collection. And here is the movement holder that I designed and 3D printed. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to print some of your own for personal use. And this is, of course, what holds the movement in its place. It's printed using PETG filament. And as you can see, there's 3 protruding tabs at the top that you can cut depending on the thickness of your case. So you might want to trim it a bit to fit properly. And here I have a dial. This is a no date dial because the movement, even though the movement has a date, it doesn't really line up with any of the NH series of dials that I have. So I like using no date dials, and it has a custom logo on it. And I prefer using these type of dials because I don't like branding on my watches, especially when it's something that I've built myself. I just don't like to advertise for another company. And of course, we need some hands, and these are specifically for quartz movements. The hands for mechanical movements like the NH series will not fit because they are a little bit bigger. So these measurements refer to the hole sizes for the hand. So 1.2 millimeters for the hour hand, 0.7 for the minute, and 0.17 for the second. So we're going to attach the dial onto the movement using some adhesives. We are not going to use the dial feet because they won't line up with the movement or the movement holder. So you could cut your own adhesives, but you can buy them already pre-cut. So they're a few millimeters in size, so they're quite small and easy to just pull them off the sheet and then just apply them on yourself. So I'm going to speed through this because this is pretty boring. There isn't a whole lot of space around the movement because of the date wheel. So you're just going to apply them onto the gray plastic part. And it's just a matter of removing the backing to expose the adhesive. So I like to use a pair of tweezers because it allows me to be, more accurate. And I'm just going to pull them off lightly. So this is what it looks like with the adhesive applied. And I am going to take my dial now with the crown stem in the movement. We're going to use that to help us line up the dial. So you want um, the crown stem to be at 3.8. So that's where is the crown position on this particular case. So 3.8, and you want the pinions to stick out of the center of the dial in the hole there, right in the middle, and push down on it. Like I said, I already snipped off all the dial feet off of this dial, so because we don't need it, we're just basically sticking it down with some double-sided tape. And that is it. You can see my dial's a bit scratched up there, but I've used this in several test builds before, so I'm going to quickly show you how to remove the stem on the AX32. So with the crown stem pushed in all the way, it should pop out a little notch here, and you just get something really sharp and push down on it, and then pull the stem, and it should come out just like that. So usually there will be something right there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it'll stick out and you can push down on it. We're just going to do a test fitting and alignment just before we mount the hands. So this is the crown that's supposed to go with it, but I'm using the temporary one that comes with the movement. So insert the crown stem into the movement, and we're just going to push it in lightly. And then you want to use the 3D printed movement holder just to make sure everything is fitting in there properly. You may need to file or sand something or trim something. I had to do this for this movement because my 3D printer isn't perfect. And as you could see, it's not entirely aligned. So this is good because, this way you can kind of adjust it. It is using double-sided tape, so you just kind of pull it out and just kind of twist it slightly. Make sure everything's aligned up before you start casing it or even mounting the hands. So let's start off mounting the hands now. So we'll do the hour hand first, and I'm going to use some manual hand pushers with some putty. Just guide it on there and push down. And it doesn't have to be perfectly at 12 o'clock because we are going to use the crown stem to move it to 12 o'clock. If you have a date complication, you will have to make sure that the clock or the watch is at 12 o'clock or midnight before mounting the hands, or else it will be out of alignment. But in the case of this dial, there is no date complication that we're using, so we're just going to mount them anywhere, and then we're going to put it at 12 o'clock. And then we are going to mount the minute hand. Again, it's the same process. We're going to get some putty, and this time around we will use the hand pushers. I have showed videos where I use like this apparatus which pushes down on it, but anyways, I like to switch it up a bit and test out my hand mounting skills. I highly recommend that you buy an inexpensive watch that's under $20, $10 or whatever, and just practice taking the hands off and putting them back on, because I think that's very valuable skill. And I used to do that when I first got into watch modding because I didn't want to damage the one that I was building. So I bought a cheap watch and I just took the hands on and off and just practice with it. You want to make sure that all the hands are level and they're not clashing in or bumping into the indices. So just kind of move it around a few times and make sure that is fine, because you don't want to find out after you case it. Finally, the hardest one to mount is the second hand. So I have a couple of them. This one is a longer second hand, and I think it will bump into the chapter ring, so I'm not going to use this one. So I do have a shorter one here that is right there, and we're going to use that instead. And let's see how it goes here. Remember, you have to be patient with this stuff because you are working with really small parts that are intricate. And if you try to jam it on, you're going to bend something, you're going to scratch the dial, you're going to do a lot of bad things, anyways, and get frustrated. But just do it carefully and it should just go on. I mean, I got lucky, but sometimes I'm fiddling at this for 15, 20 minutes. And do keep in mind that you are trying to put something that is 0.17 millimeters onto the pinion. So I'm going to push in the crown and absolutely nothing happens. So that tells me the movement is bad or the battery's dead. So I'm guessing the battery's dead. So I'm gonna change the battery on that. But before I do that, I'm just gonna test if any of the hands are gonna collide with the second hand, and just check to make sure it's level and all that. And that would be the final check before we uh, case it up. So I did replace the battery on this movement. So it's a 626 watch battery and it's dead. So I just replaced it and we're going to push in the crown and it should start ticking. Now it's time to do another test fitting. So I'm going to insert the crown stem here and that will help us lock in the dial placement and everything. And then we are going to fit in the movement spacer. So I had to trim a little bit of it. I think in this one I trimmed too much. So make sure when you get these printed, you do multiples. Some might fit better than others. My 3D printer isn't that the greatest, so there's a lot of filing and trimming that I have to do anyways. And so we're just going to do a test fitting and we're going to see if it is lined up. And I think that looks pretty good. It's matching up with the major indices and I think that's pretty good. So I'm just going to try to see if the case back goes on, and I'm not going to seal it up all the way. I'm just going to do a light, just kind of lightly close it up here. Um, There you go. And you can see all the 12 o'clock and the 3, 6, and 9 lines up with the hash marks on the chapter ring. And I just wanted to do another final check to make sure none of the hands are colliding with each other and that I could set the watch. So you just want to do those kind of checks and that it's working before we close it up. Unfortunately, I forgot to film the part where I cut the crown stem, so I'm going to use a video clip from another watch build, and I'm going to show you how I do it. I just get some calipers, and I measure off from the base of the crown stem to the base of the opening of the watch case, and that will give me how much I need to trim off. And then I take the crown stem off of the out of the watch, and I just use a pair of clippers here, and I clip it. Here is the completed watch, and I definitely prefer this colorway over the previous build. I think the white chapter ring really pops and it really brings out the color of the dial. And this, of course, is my previous one with the VH31 side by side, the VH31 on the left, and the AX32 on the right. If you're thinking about getting a tuna style watch, but you find that the regular size one is kind of big, this is a good compromise, at 43 millimeters. It has a very short lug to lug, so it is not as big as it seems, even though 43 millimeter is sort of big, but because the lug to lug is so short, it actually sits on the wrist really well. So back when I got into watch modding a few years ago, I got a lot of inexpensive Chinese watches from AliExpress, quartz watches specifically, and I wanted to, experiment a little bit by taking them apart, um, just kind of Frankensteining a whole bunch of stuff, just to learn about putting together and taking apart watches. And in that process, I had a lot of parts available, a lot of hands, a lot of quartz movements and parts in general. And I think it's good to be able to reuse some of them. especially when you get to make them better in some ways, right? So before I end this video, I'm going to try this watch out with a number of other straps. Here you'll see it on a white FKM racing strap. I think this is a very comfortable strap. I think the white chapter ring really makes the dial pop, and it's able to match up really well with a white strap. So I quite like this look, but if it's too much for you, because white does stand out quite a bit, you can obviously switch this up. Since the lug width of this thing is 20 millimeters, it's a quite easy to find straps for it. 20 millimeters is very popular. The larger Seiko Tunas are 22, but these are 20 mil. And here it is with a black FKM strap. Again, I really like FKM because it's very soft kind of rubber. It's not like hard, and especially when you wear it on your wrist for a while, it kind of softens a little bit more because of the heat from your hand, your wrist. So I like the feeling of it. That's why a lot of the straps that I do own are FKM rubber. Anyways, I'm gonna take this off and I'm gonna put on a gray one, and I think that matches up pretty good with the dial itself and the bezel insert, which also has gray. And I like using these quick disconnect ones because, I like to swap up my straps quite a bit, change the look of it. And this is also FKM, but it's gray. I really like the vents on the strap itself. I think it looks really cool. And this is also a favorite kind of combination of mine, along with the white racing strap. The purposes of these build videos is to show you that there are other options besides mechanical builds. And even when you're making quartz builds, people kind of just generally do VH31s, but there are other ones by Miyota, like the 2115, the 2035, and now we have, something with the AX32, etc. So I just wanted to contribute in my own ways with the movement holder, movement spacer, so that people can build with various other quartz movements that you have available. Especially now, it's kind of harder to get some parts because the prices of them gone up. Specifically with the NH35 mechanical movements or even the VH31, right? The price of these things have gone up significantly since I started building with them years ago. And when you have choices and options, it just makes things a lot easier. Hopefully, we'll see a lot more quartz parts, dials and cases specifically geared towards quartz because it could allow us to make watches that are smaller and thinner. It's harder to do that with a mechanical watch. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you found this video useful and maybe inspired you to create your own quartz watches and gave you some ideas. Have a nice day, and you'll hear from me in the next video.